I really loved being a student at Presentation.
I give Presentation a lot of credit for who I was.
Going to Pres, they teach you what's right and wrong.
I loved being in an all-girls environment. I loved the supportive faculty.
I was just a kid. Rape and sexual assault, sexual abuse was never really talked about. All I had was just pure fear of everyone finding out.
A fellow student had witnessed the performing arts director kissing our daughter. He was 26 at the time and our daughter had just turned 16.
She was sexually molested by her Spanish teacher.
He should have been taken away in handcuffs. He should have been arrested.
I wasn't protected.
We have this very obvious cover-up going on right now.
It was all about protecting the prestigious name of the school.
What do you say to people who have said this is a witch hunt?
They don't know the facts.
They were supposed to protect us.
The school motto is not words but deeds.
Our human problems will not be improved by words, but by action. Not words, but deeds.
They failed in their moral responsibility to help us. It had taken years for me to tell my story of a gropey teacher who showed me pornography to the police. I was a naive teenager when my teacher abused me in 1990, and the impact lingers decades later. And that piece was published in the paper October 22nd, 2017. I was writing a piece about closure, and then the floodgates opened. And that's when I started to hear, that happened to me too at Presentation. Actually, my parents forced me to go to Presentation. I knew after the first year that I was gonna love it. I loved being in an all-girls environment.
This next person needs no introduction. She is our principal, Miss Mary Miller.
So when I started at Presentation, Mary Miller was the vice principal. She was also an English teacher.
Thank you. Good morning.
She was my mentor. She was my idol. I went to her for help. We became friends.
Mary, could you say and spell your name, please?
Sure. Mary Miller, M-A-R-Y, M-I-L-L-E-R.
And your title is?
Principal.
And while you're thanking people, how about your teachers?
So John Fernandez was my Spanish teacher starting my sophomore year in high school. He always made me uncomfortable. I was involved in a Spanish poetry contest. One of the times that I was practicing the poem, apparently I wasn't feeling the narrator enough because he said, no, you're not doing it right. You need to, she's in love with the idea of being a woman. She's flirting with it like she would a lover. And he has his arm around me and he's very close to me. And he brings my hand up to my breast and says, you need to feel it in your heart. And he kissed my hand and it was just so uncomfortable. I was frozen. The following week, I came into his office. He's like, come here, I have something to show you. And he slid over a photograph, and it was a photograph of a woman wearing nothing but an open fur coat. And she was standing in front of a fireplace. I could see her breasts, I could see her genital region. I just my jaw dropped. Here's this 40-something-year-old man showing me a pornographic picture. He put his index finger up to his mouth to indicate a secret. I shouldn't be telling anyone this. I buried my secret for a couple of years until my classmate Jane, it's not her real name, confessed to me in a flood of whispers that this same man had sexually assaulted her. When she told the administration, they scared her into taking back the story. I filed a police report.
when Kate Lehane wrote that op-ed, she actually didn't name the school, she didn't name the teacher. She kept it vague on purpose. But then we got a tip in our tip line. Someone called and said, you know what, that school in that op-ed is right here in San Jose. Presentation High School is this really close-knit community of girls who are learning how to be women. This is a school where there's a ton of pride, there's a ton of school spirit, and people are very protective of this school. The first thing we did was reach out to Kate because she wrote this op-ed and she didn't want to talk. She was very reluctant to go on camera. For her, this was about closure. That led us to going online, digging deep, doing research, reaching out to Presentation alum. We were building our sources and we were getting ready to go on air when all of a sudden Presentation put out a press release.
Yeah, Jessica, today staff met with students to discuss this letter. It outlines the school's response to allegations that a longtime beloved teacher sexually assaulted 2 students here, and that even after the incidents were reported, he continued to teach for years.
The way we read that press release was, this happened 25 years ago. We investigated it 25 years ago. We take these complaints very seriously. It's old, we've moved on. But what we were finding out behind the scenes was there were more potential victims. More women were coming forward, some with cases that were a lot more recent.
I met Coach Jenna at a water polo camp.
Go, Greg!
I had never gotten attention like that before from anybody. Just so much, so interested in me, so like caring, helpful, what's wrong, can I help you, all constantly, that I just kind of soaked right into it, and I liked it. I wanted to be around her, I wanted the attention. We were 13, turning 14, and she was, I think, 24. I expressed that I had a crush on her, and she told me she felt the same way. And at first I was like, that's not right. Like, an adult, it was so confusing because I don't know why younger Grace didn't understand that that was illegal, but I just was like, okay, this older person likes me, like how? We would talk about like sexual things that we had done in the past with others, and I hadn't done anything, but I lied and I told her I had done things because I was scared and embarrassed. It first started with like just leg touching, like touching up my legs, you know, getting close over the clothes or like just in my swimsuit and a towel. And the next thing I remember is being in her back seat. The main thing that I remember is just the weight of her on top of me, because I didn't want to look at her. I didn't want to look at her, I didn't want to talk. And my whole body turned to stone, and I just remember staring at like the dark like roof of the car, like the ceiling of the car the whole time. She started doing things. She would feel my breast under my shirt, try to kiss my neck, try to kiss me. Kissing her kind of made me sick, so I just was not. She penetrated me. It was almost like my brain didn't even process the whole situation, and I just remember next minute we're in the car and I'm just numb and I'm just sobbing.
So dance has been my life since I was 3. When I started at Prez, I made the dance team as a freshman. So that really gave me a place in a community.
I'm Danielle, or Woody.
My sophomore year, I got into theater, which was, I loved everything about theater.
I'm really nervous. I can't wait to
How many plays have you been?
This is my first one.
I was 15 when it all kind of started, the grooming process started.
This man smells like coffee.
Really, my first interaction with him was when I auditioned for 42nd Street. He was the director and he was very charismatic and totally had favorites. I soon became one of those favorites, which felt good at the time. We exchanged phone numbers, and soon after that it was compliment after compliment. You know, you're beautiful, you are so talented. He even would come to dinner with my family. It was always a time to try to touch my leg or touch my arm or anything like that. Any time that he could, he would find a way. No one had any idea. I was very alone, very isolated, because I didn't want anyone to know anything that was going on. I was very ashamed. He would say things like, I would kill myself if you stop talking to me. I love you. I really wanted it to end. I don't really know how he got away with it for so long.
I feel like they failed in their moral responsibility to help us. Mary Miller was not the woman I thought she was.
Miss Miller turned to me and said, "You know, Cheryl, the walls have ears, so you better just be careful what you're saying and who you're saying it to." And the reason I know that that was the almost exact quote is because I'd never heard that expression before. My close friend, Jane, I'll refer to her as Jane, came back from a school-sponsored trip and was different and was withdrawn. It was during the summer of 1990. Eventually, she shared with me she was sexually molested by her Spanish teacher, Mr. Fernandez, on this trip.
Two former students of the all-girls Catholic high school in San Jose say they reported sexual misconduct and abuse to school leaders more than 20 years ago, and that nothing happened.
An emotional hug today between Presentation High graduates Catherine Lehane and Cheryl Hodgin Marshall, going public to say they separately reported 2 incidents of sexual misconduct to trusted school leaders, Marion Stuckey and Mary Miller.
She was in the office and was crying and saying Miss Stuckey suggested that maybe she had a dream that it happened. Sometimes when you dream things, they seem so real when you wake up. And so it must have been a dream, and that she kept asking her that. And so she was so embarrassed, she finally said, okay, fine, it was a dream. And so then I came up with the idea, how about we talk to Miss Miller, but how about you dictate to me what happened? And then I type it out, and then you can read it. So we went to Miss Miller's office, and she started to read it, and she started crying, and then I tried to read it, and I couldn't, so I handed it to Miss Miller. And she read it. When she was done reading it, she said in a very stern way, "Jane, you've already put us through this once. If you are not prepared to sit in court in front of Mr. Fernandez and your family and say what happened to you, then you need to stop talking about this. Do you understand?" I remember thinking in my childlike brain, oh my God, he's gonna get away with it.
He was awarded Teacher of the Year while I'm trying to report him for sexual abuse after they knew about Jane Doe's sexual assault.
Members of the class of 2006, a very special friend has written a letter to you, Mr. John Fernandez.
So we got a call from Mary Miller, the principal of Presentation High School. A student had witnessed Jeff Hicks, who was the performing arts director, kissing our daughter. He was 26 at the time, and our daughter had just turned 16. Mary Miller also asked us in that very difficult time if we wanted him fired for the summer program where he was scheduled to run a 6-week performing arts camp at the school. Because they had already collected $65,000 for the performing arts camp, if they fired him, they'd have to give back the money. The only option she really laid out was, would our daughter be willing to go public, press charges, and be willing to give her testimony in a court of law about what had happened between her and Jeff Hicks.
One question we had over and over was, why didn't you then call the police? The parents in some ways were expressing to us they felt intimidated. They felt like calling the police and involving the police was not the right thing to do based on the advice they were getting from Mary Miller. And in Linda Wood's case, she says she eventually came to regret not calling the police because of what it led to later on.
So the next day, I went to her office, and the first thing she said to me was, well, are you just gonna run away with him? There was a lot of promises during that time in the sense of therapy and counseling, and I'm gonna check in on you and make sure you're doing okay, all this stuff, and then never spoke to me once until she shook my hand at graduation, which was 2 years later.
Danielle Elizabeth Wood.
The people who run such a great school aren't really looking out for girls who are having like something like that affect them in such a harsh way like Gracie had. We were each other's best friends, like I can easily say that. There were instances where Gracie told me that, you know, Jenna had shared pictures of like vibrators with her on Snapchat, and I knew that that was definitely not okay. We were all sitting underneath a blanket, and I noticed that Jenna's hand started to touch Gracie's leg and started to move up a little bit, and I saw that, and like my heart kind of just stopped. I knew that something wasn't okay, so that's why I told my sister, and she went to the athletic director about it.
Jenna was not fired. She was not reported to the police. She was just asked not to come back the next year, and that's really frustrating. I just want the school to be held accountable. I want the administration at Presentation to be held accountable for their failure to, you know, take care of the kids and report these allegations.
The girls say Coach Jenna and 2 other coaches disappeared. Weeks passed, then a bombshell for Grace's mom.
My friend said to me, I heard Jenna Rowe was fired over an inappropriate relationship with your daughter. And I said, what? I freaked out.
What do you think the school's responsibility is in all of this?
I'm upset with them because if they had called the police the minute it was reported, I truly believe they could have gotten all the evidence they needed.
The school never reported the players' concerns, so Dina called San Jose police herself.
In a culture like ours that is so self-absorbed, look less at yourself and more at other people.
I know that it was all about the cover-up. It was all about protecting the prestigious name of the school.
Come on, guys. Tommy, you're the leader out there. Let's get these guys ready. I was raised in the church. Now! I was taught you need to help those who are most in need. Go! 95% of my work, I represent children who are abused in what we call an institutional setting, schools, daycare centers, sports. And the cases I've handled over the years include claims against USA Swimming, various Olympic sports like Taekwondo or fencing or gymnastics. I've never, to this day, even heard of a situation like this that was so deep, so vast, involving so many pedophile educators, involving so many victims.
We contacted a lawyer, Robert Allard. He said, I want to help you. You don't need to pay me. I'll do this pro bono.
It involved Presentation right down the street from my house. I know half the class there because I either coach them or I know their parents. What I uncovered was, in my mind, a series of cover-ups occurring over decades where the same people were involved in each and every instance.
New allegations of sexual misconduct at Presentation High School in San Jose, and the circle of accusers is expanding.
There's a lot of momentum building, and then the women start to form this group called Make Pres Safe. They launch a website. They have online forums on Facebook. It's a place for women to come and share their stories and be heard. And for many of them, it was the first time they were speaking out.
He'd relocate me from my desk to sit with him in the back of the classroom. He would press his legs up against mine and rest his hand on top of my hand.
I tried to end my life last February, and then I got better and I went away to college, and Katie Lehane writes this article about, and I'm like, I'm not the only one at Pres that was abused.
When she kind of came forward with everything, and then there was like more and more victims and survivors that would come forward, you know, I couldn't really stay quiet any longer.
The allegations of inappropriate behavior are mounting, and tonight Presentation High School is responding. The prestigious South Bay Catholic School has put 2 teachers on leave in the midst of a sex scandal.
With each news story, Cheryl and I kept thinking, this is it. This has to be it. This has to be the time when the board of directors and the Sisters of the Presentation take a stand and either force Mary to resign or fire her.
There's a few things that happened behind the scenes I think the public was never aware of. People were getting hate mail. Kate Lehane is getting hate mail. Bob Allard's getting hate mail. We're getting letters to the newsroom. People said things like, I will never watch NBC again. You are eager, especially Vicki Wynn, to buy into and promote lies and allegations against Mary Miller and the school. So people took these reports very, very personally, and they couldn't separate the idea that Mary Miller could be all of these things. She could have been an amazing English teacher, vice principal, principal, an incredible inspiration and leader to these women, but she could also have perhaps committed some mistakes.
No return address, and basically it just says, Lehane, insane. I do not believe you. I never have and never will.
It's a shame that you are recognized for your ruthless, self-promoting techniques and not for doing a shred of good. What I didn't realize is the extent of the backlash. It was deep. They talked behind our backs. They spread lies about myself and my family. They made us feel unwelcome at places like our own church. They made us feel like we weren't allowed to come to Presentation High School to watch my daughter play lacrosse.
Make no mistake, there are a lot of supporters of the school and of Mary Miller. They're on social media. They want the reporting to stop. The press release comes out. It's titled, Presentation High School Breaks Crowdfunding Record, 97% increase in giving this year.
When that press release came out, it was confirmation. We don't care about you. We care about the money. We care about the image. And how much worse of a message can you possibly send?
The school insisted in its press releases that they were not doing anything wrong, but at the same time, we were seeing them make some incremental changes. They created an office to prevent bullying and sexual misconduct.
Tonight, Presentation is responding to our reporting and to its own community. The school announced the creation of an independent committee to improve the prevention of sexual misconduct against students.
This is something that was done because there's been some criticisms and we want to address those criticisms. But Presentation has always been a leader in preventing harassment and misconduct, and we want to maintain that position.
So at this point, it's sort of a stalemate. The victims have not really seen the type of change that they were hoping for. And on top of that, Mary Miller is scheduled to be promoted to the first ever president of Presentation High School. At that point, none of us knew what was coming that was really going to change everything.
This man smells like coffee.
I met Jeff Hicks in 7th grade. He came in, having just gotten married. Extroverted, able to reel people in with the blink of an eye.
We already knew Jeff Hicks had quietly left Presentation. He had never been reported to the police after those reports that he was kissing Danielle Wood. We also knew that he'd gone on to another school serving children with special needs.
Hicks quietly left Presentation in 2004 and started teaching at another school. In 2014, he was convicted of possessing child porn and exchanging sexual messages with a 14-year-old. He was sentenced to 6 months in jail and ordered to register as a sex offender for life.
It's just infuriating. It makes me so mad. It's like, really? I hadn't transitioned to female yet, and I was really struggling. He was sending me a lot of links and messages to like forums about masturbation techniques. I think we both know what he was grooming me for. I mean, he had the kiddie porn on the school laptop. The teachers are worried about like, oh, what are the kids doing? What are the kids doing? Like, why aren't they focusing on what if the teachers are harming these kids?
I mean, I was mortified and sad that he was allowed to leave with a clean slate and do this to someone else.
Hi, my name's Vicki Wynn. I'm a reporter with NBC Bay Area. We contacted Hicks to ask about Linda's allegations. She told us about what happened with her daughter, and we want to know if you have any comment with regard to that. He said he has a family of his own and declined to answer any questions.
The first lawsuit is about to be filed against a prestigious all-girls Catholic school in the South Bay. Now, this follows a wave of sexual abuse allegations by former students in Presentation High. Our investigative unit broke this story last year.
After months of allegations that she mishandled reports of sexual abuse, the embattled president of an all-girls Catholic high school in San Jose is stepping down. Senior investigative reporter Vicki Wynn first broke the story of reported abuse 10 months ago. She joins us live from outside the school.
Jessica, when the students come back here to Presentation tomorrow, it will be the first time in 25 years that Mary Miller is no longer leading this school. That came out of the blue. She was elevated to the position of president. She'd only been in the role for a month, and suddenly she was stepping down.
I believe the attorneys looked at this situation and assessed this. This does not look good, that we have this very obvious cover-up going on right now, and the person who's at the heart of it is still there. We're going to have to repair the image that we have as a community.
Mary Miller, principal. 4 years ago, Mary Miller sat down with our station. She did an interview about Presentation and a fundraiser they were doing.
The mailbox belonging to is full.
But over the last year, she never responded to any of our emails or our phone calls. We wanted to ask for her comment about all of these accusations.
I think I wasn't protected. Sorry.
I'm strong now. I'm gonna stand up for myself, and I'm not gonna let anybody's life be affected how mine was.
What happened at Presentation can happen anywhere, and it does happen at other schools. The striking difference here is that they failed to follow the law. They created a culture of non-reporting. They created a culture of protecting sexual predators at the expense of children.